From across Siouxland are asking to lower the political temperature in the country after the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. KTIV's Matt Hoffman spoke with two local lawmakers today, Congressman Dusty Johnson and Senator Mike Rounds, both from South Dakota. So, Matt, it's one thing to call for moderation, but do the lawmakers believe that will actually happen?
Yeah, Jessica. Now, both lawmakers acknowledge that is the question. Both former President Trump and President Joe Biden have called for unity, but that's easier said than done in our current climate. Now, Congressman Johnson says he's seen politicians from both parties moderating their tone in the last few days, but it remains to be seen if that will last. Senator Rounds says the country needs to end the pandering to the extremes of both parties and instead realize the opinion of the minority party must be respected even if they don't hold power. Rounds says that while the public may not agree to the same ideas, the losing side's future should not be at risk just because they lose an election.
Your team is not successful in winning an election, that should not mean that you or your future is at risk. It means that changes will be made, recognizing that all sides have a vested interest in feeling comfortable with the outcome.
For his part, Johnson thinks his colleagues in the U.S. House have been voicing the same general idea, that political violence is unacceptable.
And our angry political rhetoric can foster and encourage political violence, and how we all have to do a better job of trying to make sure that the way we talk about politics is responsible.
Johnson says he believes both former President Trump and President Biden have sounded the right tone in the last few days. And now, while both lawmakers say lowering the temperature is crucial, the government also needs to launch a full-scale investigation into how the almost assassin was able to fire shots at the former president. Johnson says the Secret Service suffered a catastrophic failure in securing the former president's campaign rally. Rounds says it's possible the Secret Service believed the shooter was part of law enforcement, and so they weren't initially suspicious of his presence on the roof. Both lawmakers say Congress will investigate, and President Biden has also called for an independent investigation that will likely take place in parallel to that congressional investigation.
It be local law enforcement or the Secret Service itself. Somebody has to be in charge. Somebody must find out exactly what happened, and it cannot happen again.
Johnson says he's spoken with Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who said the congressional investigation cannot be long and drawn out. Given the stakes, Johnson says the investigation must be conducted efficiently to ensure all presidential candidates and even past presidents receive adequate protection. And the Secret Service will be under the spotlight again this week, with the Republican National Convention getting underway today. And it was also announced today that Secret Service protection will be issued to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's running an independent campaign for president.